Hi, this is Alanna Smith, and I'm hanging out with some people who really like stars and stripes in a circular shape.
Greetings, Cap fans. Welcome to episode 147 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. This is Rick Verbanis. I'm your host, and I am joined by the best gosh darn co-host out there. His name is Mr. Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. You see, boys forget what their country means by just reading The Land of the Free in history books. Then they get to be men. They forget even more. Liberty's too precious a thing to be buried in books, Miss Saunders. Men should hold it up in front of them every single day of their lives. Say, I'm free to think and to speak. My ancestors couldn't. I can, and my children will. Boys ought to grow up remembering that.
Well, that was a beautiful thing, Rick, but I don't have any idea what that is.
Oh, okay. Well, that is a quote. It was James Stewart.
I had a little bit of a James Stewart sort of.
Yeah.
That's
what he was doing. It was James Stewart. And do you know the movie?
I don't.
It ties in with our guest.
Is it Mr. Smith Goes to Hollywood?
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Yeah,
that's it.
I didn't
Hollywood.
see the sequel.
Oh, that sequel was awesome. Yeah, they made a movie about his first trip. That was great.
Excellent. Yeah. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so with having our guest today, Miss Alanna Smith on, I figured we'll tie it in that way. And also the movie came out in 1939, which is, we're talking today about the new Captain America series written by J. Michael Straczynski, which does take place in that time period where he, explores Steve Rogers right before he joins the Super Soldier program.
Right. Well, that is an amazing confluence of factoids that you put there in front of me, Rick. And I know got me thinking. Do you recall an instance where Steve has mentioned that movie?
Steve? Yeah, I don't recall it, but
it does.
It rings a bell. It does ring a bell. And or maybe, I don't know. Did we have maybe one of our guests that came on the show, one of the authors of the books, maybe wrote about that in one of their books about how Steve Rogers was very much kind of influenced by a Jefferson Smith from that movie. I think that rings a bell too.
Maybe. I'm certain Catman mentioned it in his guest appearance. So, well, now there's something I got to look for.
Yeah.
Figure out if he actually ever mentioned it in the comics.
Yeah, totally. It's a great movie. And for anyone out there who's not seen it, see it. If you want to be inspired, go see Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Fantastic movie. But we are excited today to have our guest on the show, Alanna Smith, who is the current editor of the Captain America family of books. And so she's been on the show before, back it was in episode 86. So it's been a little while. It's been over a year.
Yeah.
And back then, she was, on to talk to us about the two ongoing series that were coming up. And she kind of shed some light on those. And today we're hoping to do the same. We're hoping that she's going to shed some light on the upcoming J. Michael Straczynski series that comes out in September. And plus, hey, we got to find out what happened. Why did the Sam Wilson and the Steve Rogers series, Sentinel Livery and Symbol of Truth, why did they end? So we're hoping to get to the bottom of that too.
Yeah. Well, she was a great guest last time, and a super impressive person. And she gave us a lot of little good tidbits along the way as well. Plus, it gave you an opportunity to link up with Tonya Onyebuchi and get him on the show. So we owe that to her. So
we certainly do.
Yeah.
And we get a little insight too on what an editor does. So she got more into that in the last episode. So if you want to check that out, like I said, I think it was episode 86. And, you get to learn a little bit more behind the scenes, what the different roles an editor does. So maybe we'll touch base on a little bit of that today when we have her on. So Bob, we did get a new review, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You want me to read that?
Please do.
All right. So this is by Fido Rollins, or probably Fido, right? Fido Rollins? I don't know. But did you I posted that on Facebook recently. Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah. My wife has plant food, and the brand is Vigoro, VIG, right? And I was like, every time I saw it, I just kept thinking of Bugs Bunny.
Right. Yes.
Figaro. And so I posted that on, and it was funny how many people who were like, me too.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so Fido Rollins, he writes, and the title to his review, "They'll have you from hello."
Nice.
Yeah. I like that. It's clever. If you're looking for a comprehensive examination of Captain America comics, this is the podcast for you. From deep dives into single issues and storylines to incredible interviews with creators and detailed examinations of characters, Rick and Bob provide a fun understanding of the source material with a focus on the values that make the Star-Spangled Avenger a favorite of fans everywhere. Added bonuses are the subject-related hello segments, the organic tangential or tangential?
Ooh, I like that. He's added a syllable on it. Nice.
Okay, tangential. The organic tangential conversations. Just say tangent. We all, that's the tangent I tend to do. And then the occasional musical number that makes the episodes even more entertaining and relatable. I would highly recommend checking out the associated Facebook group as well for an excellent source of Cap fandom and camaraderie. Keep up the great work, fellas.
Wow, a trifecta: the hello, the tangents, and the musical numbers in one review.
Well, he's talking about you, Bob.
Wow. I have a feeling this might be Megan.
Yeah, my wife sent this in. No, anyway, no, that was really, really nice, Fido. We appreciate that. And you really touched on a lot of things, especially the Facebook group. And I'm glad you brought that up. We recently just had a ton of people join the Facebook group. I couldn't keep up with the request for approvals this past weekend, Bob, because I don't know what happened, but there was a post in the group that I'm going to pull it up here in a second. But there was a post in the group. Somebody had posted a question about something that was in issue 750. And, there's like a funeral scene, and then there was this big page of basically blocks and
faces,
right.
Heads, right.
Yeah. And then it had, their names underneath, and then they all basically, were making, a comment about the person who had passed, which was the Destroyer.
Right. Aubrey.
And there was like a dozen different characters on there. And the person asked, I have no idea who these other superpowered folks are apart from Torch, Namor, and Logan. Right. Simple as that.
Simple.
I don't know who shared this. Now, it had 11 shares. And I don't know who shared this, but this post reached 171,000 people.
Wow.
I know. There were 232 likes, 163 comments.
That's weird, huh?
I know. And like, because we have an approval process in the group, because we want to make sure that, these are legit Captain America comic book fans, that, we, as moderators, we have to approve these things. And so I was just getting ping, 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 ping. And because again, there's 163 comments here. And so I was like, what's going on? And then, you preview their comment before you approve them for the group. And 99% of them were like legitimate comic book fans. They were like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's so-and-so. Hey, and they had their comments. For the life of me, I want to know who shared this that got 171,000 people reach, because I want them on my marketing team.
Right. Yeah. Maybe this was just a Barbenheimer spillover.
Could be.
People just standing in line at the movie theater. And yeah, that's crazy though.
It is. That's
the sort of traction you hope for.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so join, come check out the Facebook group, Captain America Comic Book Fans. It is an oasis from the rest of social media. There's not going to be political discussions. We don't allow negative comments. You heard me. We don't allow negative comments. Like if someone wants to come in and say, I hate this artist, he sucks. Guess what? That's going to get deleted. You're going to get a warning. And if you keep it up, you're not going to be in the group anymore. And people respect that. And it is a fun group. It's just a bunch of positivity. It's a bunch of just walking down memory lane. A lot of just reminiscing and then talking about new stuff coming up. And so anyway, it's a great group. We have, like 5,000 people in it, and, they're all share the same love of Captain America.
That's a great detox site. You got to unlearn some habits if you want to thrive in the Captain America Comic Book Fans Facebook group, but it's well worth the effort, because what you put in, you get out, and it's a great place and you'll get a lot out of it.
Yep. All right. So we'll make sure we talk about, we got some exciting news coming up for some upcoming episodes. And so we'll share with that at the end of this particular episode when we wrap up talking with Alanna Smith. And I think she's been waiting in the green room a little too long, Bob. We got to get to her.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We're excited to have today's guest back on the show. Alanna Smith has been with Marvel since 2015, and during those years, she has worked on many Cap titles such as The Falcon, Falcon and Winter Soldier, United States of Captain America and Iron Man. Then, in 2022, she oversaw the launch of 2 ongoing Cap series, Symbol of Truth and Sentinel of Liberty. Those series are coming to a close, and a new Cap series by J. Michael Straczynski and Jesus Hayes is launching soon after. We thought, what better time than to have her back on the show. Alanna, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be back.
Yeah, we were so happy you're here. And when you were on the show a little over a year ago, you mentioned you were so excited about the concept that writers Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly pitched to you. And so we had just, I think Zero had just come out. And so we really didn't know much about the new series, and you couldn't get into a lot, but you did say that the concept sets your hair on fire, I believe is what you said. And here we are at the end, and it was a 14 issue run of Symbol of Truth, which was Sam's book, 13 issue run of Sentinel Liberty, Steve's book. We had the anniversary 750 issue come out, and then we're just a couple weeks away from the finale. Do you feel like you reached what you had envisioned, and was your mission accomplished for both series?
So it's tough, because I think all of us working on those series loved them so much that we would have loved to do 700 more issues of each of them. But that said, I think within the framework of what we got, I think all the creative teams really brought it, and worked their butts off to make sure that the endings were satisfying in the space that we had left. I think we put finale to print last week or the week before, maybe even a little longer than that, I'm not sure. It all blurs together once it's out the door, but
right.
But that issue especially is it's just so special, and it's really incredible what Jackson and Colin were able to fit into that 30 pages. Like it's a really great issue, great emotional beats, great action beats, resolves this huge mystery that we've set up. And I think it's really great. And, Symbol of Truth as well, getting to close on the story of how Sam got this new shield, which we introduced but hadn't explained, felt like a really special full circle moment for us. And with both of these teams, when we found out we were wrapping up, I met with both of them and basically said, like, look, I'm not gonna be on your case with these. Like, you do what you need to do. Like, I don't care if there's not 3 fight scenes per issue. I don't care if, we don't have a million guest stars. I care about wrapping up these books in a satisfying way. So whatever you need to do to get there, let's do it. I will not get in your way, which is how we ended up with like 2 funerals, like graveyards in the same issue of 750. And, but I think it was important to let them end both those series on their own terms. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a tall order to do 2 Cap series at the same time. In general, it was something that we kind of tried during the Hydra Cap era, but it wasn't quite the same thing because, again, one of them was Hydra.
Right.
So I think it was a really ambitious plan, and I'm really proud that we got 2 great runs out of it. Carmen Carnero drew almost all of Sentinel of Liberty, which is incredible. That's not something we often get to do. We got a crossover event. We got an oversized 750 with great talent on it. So yeah, I will always, I think, look back on this era of Cap extremely fondly. Like, I think, these were the Cap books that I have always dreamed of making, and I'm just very pleased with them, even if they ended a little sooner than I would have preferred. But that's comics sometimes. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about 750, which was a phenomenal issue. But while we're on the subject of these 2 series, did you personally have any highlights for either or both of these series that you felt like, wow, I'm really proud of that?
Gosh, well, I think for Sentinel, one of the issues where I really felt like, oh, this is something, is the issue after, I think it might be issue 4, where Cap returns from the Shadow Capital and the Redacted has followed him back. And it's kind of just a day in the life of Cap.
Yeah.
But subtly throughout it all, he knows that the Redacted is watching him and is trying to sway him to his side. And I just thought that was I got that script in and I was like, oh, this is Captain America. Like, this is the stuff right here. And I think we even showed it to Tom Brevoort at one point. He was like, that's a good issue. And I was like, okay, we did it.
That's tough to get praise from Tom.
It is. He's sparing in his praise, but it's very great when you get it. And on Symbol, I think really that finale fight even more than that, the finale fight in Mahanda, which I thought was gorgeously drawn and beautifully executed. I think the bit that I'll remember the most is the fight between Sam and Black Panther. And so Sam fights T'Challa without his costume, without his wings, I think even without his shield. And he still puts up a solid fight and is able to rebuff the Black Panther. And I think that fight is really interesting emotionally too, because what Tochi and I had talked about a lot approaching that issue was this idea that, people watched the Black Panther movie and thought, well, I don't know, Killmonger's got some really good points. Like, maybe T'Challa should be listening to him a little more. And we thought a lot about how Sam would feel a lot of those same ways. But, obviously he's not going to give in to villainy the way Killmonger did. But it was so interesting to have that kind of conflict between 2 very different Black characters and 2 very different Black perspectives. And it was just, I really loved that issue, both in terms of action and in terms of the emotion that's crackling under the surface. I think that was a peak for me in that.
Yeah, that was a really strong emotional issue too. And, and listen, I'm a white male, so I don't have that perspective, but I did, for the first time, see not going to say jealousy, but more of a, hey, we didn't have a meteor land on, in our, continent or our country to, we weren't lucky like you. And he made a point to bring that up. And that was an emotional impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Tochi does such a good job of, I think Sam can say that without coming off as small or petty or like, Sam's just saying what he believes and standing in his convictions. And that puts him at odds with this person who also has very strong convictions. And I just thought that was really fun.
Yeah. So let's go back to issue 750 because it it is, and when we had you on the show, we talked about legacy numbering, and we're not going to let that go. We're going to probably bring it up again. But we were very excited to see that Legacy 750 came back out. We honored that number. And so here you are at the end of Cold War, and so there's a little bit of follow up from that, but then you also have. And so you have, Jackson and Colin, you have Tochi, but then you have some other creators come in, and you brought in my all-time favorite Captain America writer, J.M. DeMatteis.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I think really I had a whole wish list of creators I really wanted to get for this, and a lot of it was not very exciting, going back and forth with talent management, being like, who do we have agreements with right now? Like, who can I go get? Like, and I think J.M. DeMatteis was doing work for us already over in the Spidey office, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think in that instance, it was a situation where, like, he was already in, we could kind of go to him and he was ready to go. And he was ready to go. Like, it wasn't a hard sell, it was the kind of thing where I went to him and he had a story right away, and I was like, sounds great, let's do it. And yeah, I'm really happy it turned out the way it did. And I think most of the names we really wanted, we were able to get, which was really nice. And I also think it's a really nice balance of different voices in that issue, in terms of, like, we tried to balance it between classic creators and newer creators, and also just people who hadn't done a lot of Cap before. Like, I don't think Gail Simone has done a ton of Cap, but she's obviously, she's Gail Simone. So I was like, I want to see what Gail Simone will do with a Cap story. And she had one ready to go. Like, she was like, oh, I've had this story about Cap and a bunch of kids that I've wanted to tell forever. Can I do that here? And I was like, yeah, go for it. Like, let's do it.
She just won a major award, right? Which
did?
Gail Simone?
Oh, I think probably, but I haven't looked at the results yet. Okay. Because I was traveling a lot this weekend. So.
Yeah, you had to San Diego Comic-Con, right?
Well, I didn't. I Barbenheimered, and then I went to a wrestling show. So
okay.
It's a lot of entertainment in a very short amount of time. But yeah. So yeah, in general, it was just, going to creators we thought were a good mix, and that we thought still had something to say about Cap, and luckily they all did. So yeah.
So we've got a number of questions from our patrons that we're gonna sprinkle throughout the chat tonight. So we'll maybe kick one off with Grant Baugh, who asks, the last time you were on the podcast, you mentioned that Symbol of Truth was given the legacy numbering in order to cement it as a legitimate Captain America title. Were there other measures you took during these runs to ensure that legitimacy amongst readers? And how well do you think those measures achieved that goal?
Yeah, I think there were a few things we did, including Symbol launched first before Sentinel. We worked very hard to make sure that in different places each run was referencing the other. Like, there would be moments where they kind of dipped in and out of each other leading up to Cold War. And include, like, making Ian central to Cold War was a big part of that, because, like, Ian is a big figure in Steve's life, but he's also a very, very big figure in Sam's life. So we wanted it to be this character that's very important to Sam, that ends up kind of sparking this big event that crosses everything over. And honestly, our digital media team was really wonderful with both of these books, and would approach us with a lot of ideas about, digital assets and Twitter posts and various ways to push and market the book. And, we were given a lot of variant slots to, be able to do cool art that promoted each book pretty evenly. And I kind of think we did the best we could. Whether it worked is kind of up to the exact numbers, and I don't always get all the exact numbers on which one outsold which one. But I also think in terms of how much weight each book had in this era of Cap's narrative, I think we were able to keep it pretty even.
That's Rick. I don't know if that's a term that, like, of course you probably have heard it because, Rick's like a genius and I'm a hanger on, but I haven't heard that term variant slot before from the marketing team. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, because I think lots of folks interested in, like, why are there X number of variants for this cover or none for this cover? Like, how does that work?
I can't speak to it.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Bob. Let me go ahead and no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I was going to say a lot of it is decided by the sales department before it even gets to us. So I can only speak to, my portion of it. But I know, at least for me, when we are told by sales, like, you have a variant on this issue, the question for us then becomes, like, what image can we put on this variant that's going to sell a lot of covers, and that will get people excited? And sometimes it's additive too. Like, if you have a main cover that's really just a character shot, you might be able to do something more story specific on the variant. Or if you have a really story specific main cover, you could do just a really sick pinup shot on the variant. So a lot of it can sometimes act as an extension of the narrative and as an additional tool to show people what's going on in the book and why they should be excited. So that was kind of something we tried to use throughout for both of these, to make the most of basically every piece of art we put out there to show off both these books.
All right, we have another patron who, Matthew Glover, and he asks what I think most of us are wondering. Mm-hmm. How did the editorial office arrive at the decision to end the current ongoing Cap titles in favor of relaunching with J. Michael Straczynski?
Yeah, so there's a bit of a misunderstanding in the beginning of that question, which is, if it were up to me, the editorial office, we would have done these forever. So, this is a decision that comes down from, our budgeting departments, our sales departments, looking at what the numbers are and where they're going. And, it's the kind of thing where sometimes even if you have strong numbers at a certain point, they can project out and know they'll hit a certain point later. So really there was no like ending this to do the JMS and Jesus Sai's run. It was more like, okay, these are wrapping up. Like, we just have to wrap them up. So we have to figure out what that's going to look like. And so that was job one, was like, how do we wrap these stories up in a way that is worthy of the readers that have stuck with us this whole time? And so, like, a lot of that initial moment after finding out the books weren't continuing were about that, and were about getting us as much space as we could to tell the stories that we wanted to tell. And then honestly, after that came the consideration of who's next.
So at what point in the story did you get this word? Was this before Cold War? Because I know Cold War was something that had been planned for a while, this crossover. Was it?
I think we were into Cold War already, if I'm remembering correctly. It's a little fuzzy in my head now because it was a while ago, but I think we had already put together a few issues of Cold War when we found out that we were going to have to wrap up. So it didn't really change the direction of Cold War, because a lot of those scripts were already written by the time we found out. I think maybe a few things at the very end were tweaked, because I think the way things landed with Bucky would have been slightly different if we had continued afterward. Maybe not in a better way. Like, maybe we've ended up with the better story for the brevity. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a bummer to receive that news, but we did our best, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, from what I've read, I mean, I haven't read finale yet, but everything leading up to that point, it has been satisfactory as
Great.
far as, seeing these loose story, tie-ins. And because it was a huge concept that
Yeah.
Jackson and Colin came up with the whole
Hmm.
outer, the outer ring and outer circle,
Hmm.
sorry.
Yeah.
And then what Bucky did to combat that, and bringing Ian into it,
Hmm.
and revisiting uh, Dimension Z. There
Hmm.
were so many different elements, but at the
Yeah.
same time, they really captured Steve's essence. They brought him back as a man of the people. They gave him civilian life, some friends. They really well balanced. I mean, as a huge Steve Rogers fan, I was very pleased with the story and the execution of it.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah,
I was as well. I always love reading their Steve. So
yeah.
uh
And
yeah.
Sam was good too. Tochi did
Yeah.
an excellent job. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. And it
Uh,
was definitely a different task wrapping up each one, because I think for Tochi's, we were almost fortunate that we were kind of between stories.
mhm.
We had more that we were gonna do. We had kind of a, next arc plan. But a lot of that was kind of excised in favor of landing where it felt emotionally right. And we had the space to do that because we didn't have a bunch of, plot threads that we necessarily needed to wrap up. So a lot of it was like, where do we get to a point where emotionally this feels correct? And a lot of it with Jackson and Colin was how do we tie up this?
Yeah,
Like
they had so
like
much.
oh my
They're
god, we've got
balancing
a
so
lot
many
to do.
things. Yeah.
So, but luckily I think they are really excellent at cramming a lot of material into not a lot of pages. In a good way. Like I think they're good at getting through a lot in one issue without it feeling cramped. So
Yeah.
that is our hope for finale, is that it doesn't feel cramped, but it feels substantial.
And it sounds like you said 30 issues earlier, so it sounds like it's a larger than normal comic
Yeah,
as
30
well. Yeah,
pages. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how getting J. Michael Straczynski back to writing comics happened
Hmm.
after such a long hiatus. Because other than a short story he did in Thor 750, he hadn't really been in comics for over a decade.
Yeah.
Last working for DC. How did you lure him back?
So I can't take full credit here because I think maybe actually not sure who made the initial contact. I think it maybe was some combination of Will Moss and Tom Brevoort. Um, so I think Tom's known him for a while. But I think it's the kind of thing where with a lot of these guys, the line of communication is always kind of open. And it's a situation of, if they have a gap in their schedule, like, can we do something cool? Like, is there room to jam on something? And so for me, when I was looking around to figure out again what comes after this, that that I will feel good about, that I think fans will feel good about, uh I realized that, despite the fact that JMS wrote that scene in Spider-Man that has become very famous as a Captain America scene, where he does the plant yourself by like a tree by the river of truth and say, no, you move. Like
I can't wait. I hope to
that's
talk to
become
him about
such
that.
a yeah,
Yeah.
that's become such an iconic Cap moment. And then I looked and I was like, he's never written the Cap going, and yet he's got one of the main scenes that everyone knows about Captain America. Um, so I was like, I wonder if there's like an itch there that he's waiting to scratch. And I think I mentioned it to Will Moss, who's my supervisor. And he mentioned that he was working on something with him where he'd written a bit of Cap. And so he sent that script over to me, and I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good Cap. Like, let's see if we can do something cool. And he was down pretty much immediately. Like, he had been waiting for this call for ages.
JMS was waiting.
Yeah. He was
Oh,
very excited. So I correctly read that he was very interested in Captain America. And so yeah, it's just been a lot of jamming on ideas and trying to get to the core of what his take on Captain America is. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
yeah. Did he kind of reveal to you maybe what it was about Captain America that interested him, and why that is the character he chose to come back to?
I'm not totally sure. I think I think at least my read on it is that I think he's drawn to these more like altruistic characters like Superman, Spider-Man, Captain America. But I know one of the things we talked about a lot is that it's very easy for Steve Rogers to become kind of this like authoritarian, very distant, very stiff figure. And he was very interested in like going against that as much as possible and really getting into what makes this guy charming and likable and charismatic, and the kind of ordinary guy that's underneath all the super soldier stuff, kind of an extension of what a lot of what Jackson and Colin have been doing. Like in the new run, he's still in his old apartment, he's still in his old neighborhood. It's still very local. So yeah, I think that was part of the fun of it for him was, how do I really get people to love this dude? It seemed like was part of the challenge that he put to himself, and I think he's doing a really good job of it because his Cap is extremely charming. So I think people are going to like it a lot.
Was that what it was about his pitch that interested you?
Yeah, I mean, I think in that script that I read where he had, bits of Cap, again, it was just a very like chummy, down to earth, like, Steve Rogers-y Captain America. And so I was like, okay, he can, like, that's what I want from Captain America, and he can do that. So I think we'll be simpatico in terms of how we see this character and how we want the readers to see this character.
So Jesus Saez is going to be the artist on the new series, and he's been around for 20 or so years and is no stranger to Cap, having provided artwork for the Hydra Cap series, 9 issues back in 2016 and 2017, as well as Cap 25. How did he land this gig?
So Jesus is someone that I've worked with previously. I worked on those Cap Steve Rogers issues that he worked on, and a lot of this was input from JMS and what he was looking for in a storytelling partner. Because what was really valuable for us on both Symbol and Sentinel was Tochi just was on the same wavelength as RB, and Jackson and Colin were on the same wavelength as Carmen. So it was a priority for me, as much as possible to get someone that JMS was hyped about. And a lot of our priorities in that search were someone who can do gravitas, who can do, some humor, but is also just really down to earth and focused on the facial acting and the subtle character work. And so we had a few names in contention, as we often do for these things. And Jesus ended up sticking out because he was just coming free from his great long run on Punisher. And also JMS had worked with him before, I believe over at DC actually. So they had kind of an established rapport already, and he knew Jesus's work and liked Jesus's work. So at that point, there was some weighing of, is it too soon for him to, return to Cap? And ultimately, like, my feeling on that was it's a very different Captain America, and he never really got to draw Captain America. Like, he had to draw evil Captain America for many years. He was very good at it. He was great at it. But he didn't really get a shot at like real actual Steve Rogers. So we talked to him, and he ended up being interested in returning because it was JMS and because he liked the pitch. So yeah, that's kind of how things came about, and he's doing really beautiful work on it. So yeah.
Yeah, we can't wait to. We've seen bits and pieces, the covers and some of the stuff from the first issue. It's been sent out as kind of PR stuff, but yeah, can't wait to see more. And can you explain to Bob what gravitas means?
Sure.
It's a type of, isn't that a kind of cheese?
Yes, it is. He's very good at cheese.
It's a good red. It's good with a red. I think like a dark.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, just this kind of like this kind of weight to his work. Like there's a lot of artists who are very good at facial expression, but a lot of it sometimes is very heightened and very like like hyper expressive, and that's great for a certain kind of book. But I think what we were looking for here was that person who can really get into like a very subtle, nuanced area of expression that has some more seriousness to it and some more weight to it. So that's kind of what I mean by gravitas.
Gotcha. All right. Is there anything else that you can tell us about the new series?
Let me think. I think just that it's I think it's going to be a lot funnier than people are expecting it to be.
Oh, okay.
There's actually been we kind of went through when you develop a new launch like this, you kind of wiggle around a bit before you settle on like, okay, this is the tone, this is the deal. And we kind of went through a few iterations before JMS really cracked it, and all of a sudden like this really great vein of humor came through, and this really great like sense of rapport and snap in the dialogue. And it's a very funny Steve Rogers who's in very serious, intense situations, but it's also just very funny and personal, and just really entertaining. I've laughed a lot reading the scripts, and I think we've teased this a bit, but we're also delving into a period of life for Steve that we haven't really seen a lot of before, which is the late 30s after his mom passed away, but before he joined the super soldier program. So it's a time for him of a lot of hardship because he's kind of, doesn't really have a place to live, doesn't really have a regular job, and is kind of scraping by and doing the best he can. And during that time, we're going to see him intersect with some major historical events that were happening in New York City during that time. So I think that element of it is going to be really interesting as well. And I really like what JMS has been doing with that. It's a part of history we don't see a lot, the home front before we entered the war. And it's also a part of Cap's history we don't see a lot. So I think it'll be really compelling.
Alanna, you have no idea what a happy boy you've made tonight of a certain Rick Verbanus.
I know.
So
Bob loves the historical stuff. He eats that stuff.
Rick is overjoyed right now because I know from our close interactions over the course of this show and 380 episode. What is it, Rick? 390 episode, whatever.
Legacy
but
numbering.
Rick loves pre-super soldier serum Steve stories.
I do.
Yeah.
And I saw his eyes light up there. So
I do. And
I'm
Bob
glad
loves historical moments.
I'm glad you're both competing about who would be happier about this. That's a good place to be, I think.
Yeah. Although I got to tell you, when you said that, Steve's going to have a sense of humor and make some jokes during very serious, moments, I know it's not going to be like this, but I had this horrible thought in my mind. It's going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger, beating someone up and then throwing a one-liner,
Oh no. It's not one-liners. It's
okay.
a little quirkier than that in a very charming way. So
good.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're going to see a little Arnie Roth.
Yes, I think so. I think he will appear in the flashback sequences.
Excellent.
So,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. So in issue 750, we catch a glimpse of Aaron Fisher at the funeral. And of course, he recently appeared in the longer Infinity Comics Love Unlimited series, issues 49 through 54. And which, by the way, I love that. I love that story.
Thank you.
And he apparently gained some powers.
He did, yes.
Which was shocking when I read it. And so I want to know if that would be considered canon in 616 and if we can expect to see more Aaron in the future and perhaps some of the other captains, network captains as well.
Yes, you can. Imminently, actually. I think he is popping up with his new powers in an upcoming issue of Iceman. I don't remember exactly what issue it is. 3, maybe? I don't know. I don't edit that book, so I don't bring off the top of my head. But yes, that was completely canon. All of that happened. He has cool kinetic force field powers now. And, part of that was, the idea of that is he can show up in more places now. And be more versatile as a character, because we really love Aaron. I've been fortunate to work with Josh Trujillo on a bunch of Aaron stuff, from the first story to this, and he was the one who was really pushing for, like, I'd like to give him powers in this. Can we do that? Because I think it's good for him long term, and I happily agreed. So yeah, I really love all of the US of Cap characters, and I'm always looking for excuses to put them in more things. So I definitely don't think you've seen the last of him and his powers. And next place he shows up will be Iceman, assuming that issue hasn't already come out and I'm just behind.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep my eyes open for it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our listeners are really excited about what's ahead. And they've got some lingering questions about what's next, perhaps. And so Joshua Van Dyne, one of our patrons, he wants to know, what would it take? And I think he's serious here. He wants to know, what would it take to get a Sam Cap book up and running again to go along with the new Steve book once the Symbol of Truth ends?
Yeah. I'll be honest, that's kind of a question we're still working through internally. Like, I want to do it and I'm ready to do it. The question for me is, like, I'm determined to do it in a way that has longevity. And so we kind of tried the thing where we launched both of them at once, and there's still a lot of learning to be done on, I think, what worked about that and what didn't work about that. And it's stuff we're still kind of sorting through. And it's a lot of stuff for me to think about as well, because, I am currently the steward of the character, and I need to figure out a way to keep him on the board and keep him active. And, just on a personal level, like, Sam was Cap when I started at Marvel, so Sam has always kind of been my Cap. So that's kind of a center that I always gravitate back to. So yeah, I think fans did show up for this, and I'm very grateful for that. So I'm not going to sit here and say, like, well, fans need to show up for Sam Cap if they want more Sam Cap. Like, I think a lot of it is timing, finding the right moment to do that, in terms of what the other series is doing, in terms of interest in the character, even outside of comics. And I think it's something that will happen. It's just a matter of figuring out the best way to do it that positions it for the most success. Because it's a responsibility I take very seriously. And so we're kind of still in the period of figuring out what's the best way to go about this. And I am happy that in the meantime, he is the Captain America in Avengers. So that gave me some comfort as the run was ending up, that he's still in books, he's still Cap. There's no plans to take the shield away from him again. So yeah, I think really it's just a matter of time, and it's on us to make a book that is too good to ignore, basically. So yeah.
All right. Mark Dumier asks, do new creative teams come in with an idea of how many issues their run might last? Is there a minimum you're looking for? And do you think we might ever see 100 issue or longer run again?
So I hope so. On the last question, it's one of those things that's very determined by the market and what people are responding to, and also what retailers are responding to. Creative teams do usually have an idea of how many issues they have, and I think in this case for Captain America, I think we were probably greenlit for 12 to start, like 2 arcs, if I remember correctly. Either 10 or 12. And then I think fairly early, we decided we were going to do Cold War. And so that was greenlit actually really, really early in the process. So we always knew we were driving toward that. And we also knew 750 was in the works, like really far back, because we had kind of projected out the numbers. So it really depends though. Like some new series, you you're kind of like, let's start with a 5-issue arc and see what happens. Or, you know, sometimes we're like, okay, let's start with 12 and see what happens. But a lot of that it's tricky to gauge because it's very dependent on the market and sales trends and what our sales department is willing to greenlit ahead of time, and how much they want to wait and see. So it's hard to say like there's one there's one way we do it, because it's constantly kind of shifting depending on each series and each character, sort of.
All right. So while we're on the subject of numbering, will the new JMS Cap series, which obviously you're starting over with a new number 1, will that continue the legacy numbering? And I'm assuming that would be making it 752.
Yes, but it's 751, I believe.
So the finale is not 751?
Yeah, because the finale is focused on Sentinel, and Sentinel didn't have the legacy numbering. So at least to my internal brain system, it felt like it made sense for that to be also outside the legacy numbering. But yeah, so it'll be 751 starting with JMS's issues.
So another one of our patrons, Seth Offenberger, he shares, I really appreciated the temporary addition of the codes and ciphers. I kept a legal pad next to my reading pile and felt like the few minutes it took to solve a code added to the tradecraft vibe of that run. I easily lured in my nephew with the cover to issue 4, and that was a fun level of puzzle we enjoyed together. Are there any extras planned for future runs? I encourage more activities where they can be seamlessly integrated like they were here.
Yeah, I hope so, because we had a blast doing it. Like the origin of that was I'm a big nerd for the special operations executive from World War II, which is, again, very specific, very nerdy. But it was basically a group of secret agents and saboteurs during World War II from the UK, who were made up of a lot of like very ordinary people. And I think around that time I was reading they still have the manual that they would give them, and they publish it, and I was just interested in it, so I read the manual and I was like, oh, codes are cool. It would be cool to do a code for this, because you know, a lot of that first issue is them breaking the radio code and stuff. So I tried to do my own code and I failed miserably. I was so terrible at it. I think I was trying to do a Playfair cipher. I don't know how to do a Playfair cipher. Like, it's not in my skill set. But luckily, Tom Brevoort, back in his like fanzine days and you know, all the colorful past that Tom has had, was very experienced in creating codes and ciphers. So I kind of presented it to Tom and was like, can we do something here? And so Tom was kind enough to come up with a code for me that I didn't understand at all. And then just on the phone with him and be like, Tom, how does this work? I don't get it. And then he explained it to me in a way that I did get. And I was like, okay. But it was a blast for us to do. I think Jackson and Colin came up with a few of the codes, but most of them were me just spitballing things that sounded mysterious. So
oh wow, okay.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, and it honestly didn't take too much time on our end. So I am hoping that we can do something similar. I just have to figure out what that is, because we don't have like a whole sales department figuring these things out for us. It was just me in a room being like, what can we do that's weird? So
well, that's cool that you had a big hand in that. I'm thank you. And by the way, thank you for it not ending up being something like drink more Ovaltine.
That is the message that someone sent into us, and someone sent us a coded message after having broken the cipher, which meant I then had to sit there and figure out how to decode something, which I hadn't done at that point. I was like, God, this is a pain. Why am I making everyone do this? But yeah, that was what the message was, which I got a laugh out of. So
that's funny. All right, another patron, Ash Barnes, asks, I'm extremely excited about the Thunderbolts book that's in the works, featuring some of our favorite Cap characters like Bucky, Sharon, and US Agent. This makes me wonder how much are favorite supporting Cap characters will be able to appear in the upcoming Captain America series. Will they make some appearances, or will this series have more of a Steve Rogers focus?
That is a great question. I am also very excited about Thunderbolts.
Are you editing that?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, I advocated very hard for that book.
And just so everybody knows, Jackson and Colin, that's one of their books that they're going off to, is to do this Thunderbolts book.
Yes. So we're really excited to still be working together. Some of this we started talking about, I think, before Cap even wrapped up. It was kind of a bit of synergy that JMS kind of happened to not be using a lot of these characters right away. He's kind of taking his time to establish his version of Steve and where his Steve is and what the story is. So it was an opportunity where a lot of these characters were free to kind of appear somewhere else, and it worked out very comfortably like that. But that's not to say there's any kind of embargo on them appearing in Cap. I think Sharon has already popped up in one of the scripts that I have. I think it's probably only a matter of time before Bucky does too. So yeah, I think these are things that will feed each other rather than cannibalize each other, and it's just a matter of where JMS wants to use these characters, and it won't get, like, the stories are such that they don't preclude appearances in either place. So
sure.
Yeah,
that's cool. I mean, we had Jackson and Colin on the show a couple times, and I remember talking to them in the beginning about, their plan and how ultimately every single Captain America writer who's on for any sort of time has to do their Red Skull story. And they said, well, we're not in any rush to do a Red Skull story. We will eventually. And we have some ideas for a really cool Red Skull story, but we're not in any rush to do it. And it turns out, just from the solicitations that you're seeing for Thunderbolts, Red Skull's the villain. So I'm happy to see that they get to finally do the Red Skull story. It's
true. He's a very extremely important component of that series, I think, in a way that a lot of people won't expect. It's a good book. It's very exciting.
How mysterious.
That's not to say they're friends. I don't want people to get, I don't want to get angry emails about us turning the Red Skull into a good guy. That is not the case. Don't worry. All right. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm very excited for people to read that book.
So we've got one more patron question by Aaron Paul, who he asks, I thoroughly enjoyed the last creative team, especially as Sam's biggest fan. In this upcoming run, are there any plans to incorporate John Walker? I know that he is a character with a lot of fun potential, and I would like to see what he has been up to since the Devil's Reign story came to a close. I also want to take a moment to request the Natural and his parents make a return as well. And I know we talked about this last time, and we're big fans of the Natural and his parents, and I think you are too.
Yes, I am. I think they're delightful. I don't have any plans for them yet, but I am hoping that eventually we can return to them. Might just be a matter of me hooking up with Derek Landy and figuring out if there's some fun thing we can do. Sorry, you see my cat exploring.
Oh yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah.
She's stuck in this room with me for soundproofing, so she's getting a little restless. Oh my God.
In all fairness, I have one down here as well. So
I've never seen her do this before. Sorry. Cat sidetrack. But yeah, so far there are not any John Walker plans in the JMS and Jesus run, which is not to say never. It's just a matter of seeing if there's a place where he is needed. But for now, he's going to be popping up in Thunderbolts in a very fun way. So if you want to see John Walker being his messy self, definitely check out Thunderbolts, because I am extremely fond of John Walker. I think he's a delightful, weird mess, and so I try to put him in stuff as much as I can. Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of characters that we'd like to see in some upcoming stories, I mentioned this the last time you were here. Any chance that we might be seeing some flashback stories of Isaiah Bradley, especially since rumor is he's going to be in the next Captain America film?
I don't have any plans for it at the moment, but that could always change. So it's just a matter of, we don't have anything coming up in the immediate future, but it's something I'd like to do and I think would be fun. So yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun talking. So tell us, what other series are you working on, for Marvel? And then maybe you can tell us a little bit, maybe any other personal projects you got coming up.
Sure. So the other big book I'm working on right now is Scarlet Witch, which has been an absolute blast. Steve Orlando and Sarah Pichelli, and now Lorenzo Tometa, who has joined us on the creative team. Oh, come on, cat. My cat is now attacking my pop filter. Sorry about that. Anyway, so the Scarlet Witch run has been really fun. We've got a lot more plans for that. That was one where, behind the scenes, we were only greenlit for 5 issues initially, but then there was such a great response to it that we're doing a lot more.
Well, give an elevator pitch for Scarlet Witch.
Sure. So the pitch for this is that she has moved to upstate New York, and she has opened a witchcraft shop. And in the witchcraft shop, there is a enchanted door called the Last Door. And anyone who is basically at the end of their rope with nowhere else and no one else to turn to can find the last door and walk through. And regardless of what their issue is and what they need to be done, Wanda will help them. So it's been a much more episodic series where it's, like, not quite Doctor Who because the problems are coming to her, but like, that kind of thing where each issue, someone comes through the door and Wanda has to figure out how to help them. And that's been a lot of fun because we've been able to kind of get into questions of what if the person who wants help poses a problem to someone who Wanda is allied with, or what if that person is a villain, or what if that person is microscopic and Wanda has to become microscopic to help them. So yeah, it's been a really fun way to explore Wanda's character in a fun status quo, basically.
All right, so you got me curious about it now. I may have to check that out. I mean, has she given up, the hero biz to do this, to open up the store?
She is still an Avenger in her main life, but this is kind of the thing that she does when she's not Avengering.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I think Steve is getting really, really good at the kind of one and done episodic structure, so each issue feels very satisfying, which was one of our goals when we started it. And other than that, well, let me Google to make sure something has actually been announced.
You also you've been doing the Wasp too, right?
I have. That the anniversary series wrapped up, but I did the 4-issue Wasp anniversary series, which featured Janet and Nadia, which was a lot of fun because I got to work with Cassia Nee, who I worked with way back on Mockingbird for a minute when I was on Mockingbird. But I am also working on the White Widow solo series, which follows Yelena Belova. And that series is going to be so much fun. Sarah Gailey is writing it. They kind of came on very quickly to the series, and they just got the voice of the character and the charm of the character so quickly and intuitively. And Alessandro Miracolo is drawing it, and it's just beautiful. And I think that series is going to be a sleeper hit. It's just a ton of fun. And for people who are reading Thunderbolts, I would recommend checking out White Widow as well, because she's going to pop up in Thunderbolts. And it's not required reading, but I think you'll want to see more Yelena when you see her in Thunderbolts. So, because she's a weird delight. So, yeah.
Excellent. That sounds like fun. And what about any personal projects you got coming up?
Nothing super public. I'm working on a novel still. I'm always working on some novel, but I'm working on my third novel that I'm writing, and then I'm gonna try to get an agent interested in it and see where things go from there. But it's a process.
All right.
It's a lot of sitting at my dining room table and typing for hours. But it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, honestly, aside from that, I got into bookbinding, and so now I'm making custom journals and stuff, which has been very rewarding and fun. So
Get to use your creative side.
yeah. I've gotten big into crafting this year because I think working on comics and working on like a novel to be published, it's been really rewarding to learn how to do something that doesn't have a commodified end goal. Like
Okay.
I can just knit a scarf and have a scarf, or I can, do a macrame tapestry and have a macrame tapestry. So yeah, that's my
Just
crafting
art for art's
soapbox.
sake.
Yeah,
Art's for art's sake. Yeah.
I think everyone in comics should take up at least one craft. I think it's very therapeutic.
I
So,
gotcha. Well,
yeah.
listen, Alana, we really do appreciate your time coming on the show. Thanks for the recap of this cap series that are ending now, and a preview of what's to come. And we're very excited because we know if it continues with the way it's been, we feel like the characters are in good hands with you.
Thank you.
You've done an excellent job pulling together fantastic creative teams and kind of overseeing the whole process. So we're just excited to see more.
Thanks. That's very nice to hear, and I'm excited to do more. So
Excellent. All right. Well, that was a really fun conversation with Alanna Smith. She's such a joy to have on the show.
Really is. Yeah. Just, professional and personable and engaging, and I always get like some little tidbits, that stuff I didn't know before, just even the technical stuff. I love that stuff.
Yeah. That's such I'm sure like any job, you have your good days, your bad days, and, it becomes a rut after a certain point, but that's gotta be kind of cool, helping shape a laundry list of characters, and by pulling in, different creative teams and helping work with them on ideas and overall themes, and just having your hand in that to kind of put your own little mark on some beloved characters for a little brief period of time, but still that's got to be fun and exciting too.
Yeah, it's a legacy, right? I mean, to have that, your name is on that forever. And that's got to be a pretty cool feeling. And
Oh,
she's
God.
got nowhere to go but up, I mean, she's relatively young, and she's got just a bright career in front of her.
Oh my God, Bob, you just reminded me, this is not a period of my life that I like to talk about too much, but there was a period where, I don't know, half a year, 10 months. I don't remember. I worked for a small comic book publisher as their director of marketing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I wasn't a big fan of the product we put out.
It's it was not like Chicka Chicka Bound Bound comics, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't X-rated.
No.
But they were R-rated, and but they were more kind of like of the violence, really.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not really into that type of thing, but hey, you need a job, you do that, right? So,
yeah.
But my name is out there in, you open up a comic book and there's my name.
Wow.
Rick Rabanus, director of marketing. And so that's out there forever, and I'm not exactly proud of it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's something. That's something.
I guess.
Wow.
I guess. So, we talked about the new Captain America comic book series coming out by J. Michael Straczynski. I think we're all very excited for that. That's going to come out in September. And so if you're listening on the day that this podcast comes out, which is August 2nd, you have just 5 days to go to your local comic shop and make sure that you order, put in your order, because they have retailers have what they call a final order cutoff, FOC. And so that's when they can adjust their sales numbers up or down, depending on what kind of feedback they get from their customers. And, I used to own a comic store. This was a very, very important part of my job, because, you never want to order too much, because then you're stuck with inventory. It's not returnable. And you don't want to order too little, because you sell out, and then people don't want to come back to your store because they can't get what they want. So it's a very, very important thing. I say all that is August 7th is the final order cutoff date for Captain America #1. Now, it's not to say that you can't go in and ask for it after then, but it'd be really helpful to your comic book store if you did it before then. And but whatever you do, make sure you put your request in to get Captain America #1 coming out in September.
I will indeed do that, Rick.
We didn't get a chance to talk to Alanna about, but there's another book that she's working on that it's Captain America that comes out in late September. And that is, it's a 4-issue miniseries called Cap Wolf and the Howling Commandos. And it's not the Cap Wolf that we knew from the Mark Gruenwald area. It's actually a World War II book.
Yeah. This sounds pretty cool, actually. I'm kind of looking forward to this. I'm not a huge Cap Wolf fan, as you know, Rick.
Right.
I love the Howling Commandos. I love World War II, and this is intriguing to me.
Yeah, Cap gets bitten by a werewolf, and he becomes a werewolf during World War II, and then the fun and excitement and insanity ensues. So that comes out late September. I think the writer on that series is Stephanie Phillips. So again, make sure you let your retailer, your comic shop know that you want to add that to your pull list.
Yep. Gonna do it. Actually, I already did it tonight, Rick.
Oh yeah?
Yep.
Excellent. So Bob, I am so excited about some of our upcoming episodes. Next episode, we're going to go back to Dimension Z. So we've been covering Castaway in Dimension Z, which is a volume 7 series that came out in 2013, written by Rick Remender and art by John Romita Jr. We've covered the first 6 issues. There's 4 to go. We've been doing this the second Wednesday of every month. And so next episode, 148, we're going to be covering number 7, and the story's getting good, Bob.
It is getting good. It's getting tense.
I believe we left on a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then come back going 149. We're going to take a trip to 1972, Bob.
Oh, groovy.
Can you dig it?
I can. Right.
We're going to do Captain America 151 and 152, which was a story featuring Mr. Hyde and the Scorpion. All right. Then episode 150, you got to have a special episode when it's 150, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to our Nightcap series.
Nice.
And so that's when we have patrons from the super soldier level join the show, pick the topic, and so we're gonna have Matthew Glover, and he actually invited another patron on the show, Ash Barnes. Now she's been a long time since she's been on the show. That was back when we were covering the Captain America and Winter Soldier TV series. But so the two of them are going to be on the show, and they have a fun top 10 list that they want to do as the topic.
Exciting. Yeah.
And that's going to be top 10 versions of Captain America. So how
fun.
I know. And then Bob, I'm super excited. I'm a big fantasy football fan, right?
I know you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm a big fantasy fan. So,
are you?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So,
yeah. Like
different thing, but whatever.
No? Oh, okay.
There's no football in my fantasies, but whatever. It's fine. I'm gonna accommodate here.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Bob. So we're gonna combine my two passions, Captain America comic books and fantasy football, and we're gonna have a Captain America fantasy draft where you and I are going to draft characters for our own teams.
Okay.
More details to come.
All right.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
That's going to be episode 151. So
you piqued a lot of curiosities out there tonight, Rick.
I'm so excited for this particular episode, Bob.
Yeah.
I've already planned my fantasy draft strategy.
Oh my gosh.
I totally have.
Yeah. Do you have snacks?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Of course. There might be a brewski involved too. Who knows?
Okay, great.
I think I covered enough. What do you think?
I do, Rick. It's funny. I did want to point out when Alanna was talking about the her her Scarlet Witch series. It sounded very intriguing to me, but I started to have a little bit of cold sweat. I don't know. Did I ever tell you the story about the time I was trapped behind the counter at a witch store?
No.
No. Yes, I was a young man. I was probably 14, and I was down in Salem, Massachusetts, which is, of course, the witch capital of the Northeast. And there's a witch store there run by the famous local witch, Lori Cabot, whose family had lived in those parts for generations and generations. And so I was just poking around the store. We had ridden our bikes down to Salem, and we're looking around and gone into the witch store. And I was sort of poking around, and there was, like a counter with crystals and stuff like that. And I went behind the counter to see what it was, what was on the wall.
You were allowed to go behind the counter, or did you sneak?
Well, maybe not. I don't know. But when I turned around, Lori Cabot had come out of the back, and she was standing in that little opening that would have allowed me to extricate myself from behind the counter. Of course, her back was to me, and she was talking to some other people. And she was a very, very large woman, Rick. But she was a witch. Everybody knew that. And so I didn't know if I should just like tap her on the back, or if I could just think it or whatever. But I was like frozen.
She reads
in
minds,
fear.
Bob?
Yeah, like she read minds or something, but I was frozen in fear at that moment. And so as Alanna was talking about this story and Scarlet Witch's witchcraft shop, it got me thinking about my time with Lori Cabot. And I hung out there for a while until she moved.
She didn't know you were there?
She didn't know. She was a very large woman, and I was a very small boy. So,
well, there you go.
Yep.
You learn something new about each other every episode, Bob.
Yep.
All right. There's some sort of witch joke there, but I
Is it a sandwich? Because I could go for one of those.
Don't get me started on that. Great sandwich. All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis, and you have been listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.